Hey folks, it's Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com. A lot of people have been timing out in drafts, both in slow drafts and live drafts, and been getting Cam Akers assigned to their rosters. And it's a pretty simple problem you can avoid if you use the draft pilot that the FFPC provides. So what I want to do is just give a very quick tutorial on how to just enable the minimal settings in Draft Pilot to avoid the situation. So what you want to do is you go into any of your FFPC leagues, and up on the menu bar here you'll see Draft Pilot. So you click on Draft Pilot, and within Draft Pilot there's basically two sections to this. There are strategies that you can employ for specific types of leagues that you have, and then there are also ranking sets that you can define. Now you can define many ranking sets and assign them to any number of draft strategies, but I'm just going to have I'm going to create a custom ranking set here that is basically going to move Cam Akers to the bottom of the rankings. So I have, let me get rid of this, a couple. So you come in here and you'll see that you can create a new ranking set. So I'm going to call this my July 21st ranking set. That gives me an idea of when I created this, just to embed that date right into the name. And then when you create a ranking set, it's going to be, you have to initially seed the rankings. You're not going to type them all in by hand. Um, so they provide the default FFPC ADP rankings. So I'm going to use that to just, fill up my list by default. So when I do that, it has now the list of players, and this is the same list of players that you would see in the draft room over on the left-hand side in your player queue. Um, but you'll see here that currently Cam Akers is listed as the 25th overall player, and we don't want to have this in case we time out. If we're using Draft Pilot backed by our custom ranking set. We don't want Cam Akers, anywhere on the radar so that he might get picked up. So what I want to do is I just want to click over here down the bottom. This is where you can, you move the players up and down. You can organize the rankings however you want. I'm just, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to completely fade Cam Akers in my ranking set. And I'm going to click this double arrow, and that's going to drop him all the way to the bottom. So now if I scroll all the way to the bottom, there's Cam Akers. So there's no way Cam Akers is getting auto-picked, because when it goes to this ranking list, Cam Akers is nowhere to be found. So I have my, you can make other changes too. Let's say I want to, let's say I'm super high on Travis Kelce and I want him to be picked up as, my second player overall. You can manipulate these players however you like. So I got my ranking set saved. So I go back to the rankings page, and now we see I have my two ranking sets here. There's the default one, which will always be there, and I have the one I just created. It's the July 21st one. So now I have my ranking set defined. So now I go over here to draft strategies. Now you can define multiple strategies, but in order to keep this simple here, I'm just going to go with the default strategy that they provide you, and I'm going to assign my rankings that I just created to this default strategy. So click on Edit Rankings. Oh, I'm sorry. Click on Change Ranking Set. There's my July 21st. Save it. So now I have the July 21st ranking set the specified for my default strategy. And you can assign a strategy to any kind of league that you're running. You could set up strategies specific for Dynasty or, football guys or whatever. But this is just going to be my generic backup strategy that I'm going to use for all leagues. So I'm going to save this. So my default strategy has my new ranking set that has Cam Akers pushed all the way to the bottom. To show you a little bit about the strategies themselves, I'm going to edit this strategy, and I'm going to do one other thing in here. There are different components to the strategy that you can define. You can get very specific about, when running back should be drafted and a whole bunch of other things. But I'm going to go into this roster preferences section of the strategy. And what this does is it allows you to set guardrails as to the maximum number of players at each position that you want to have on your team in the event that the draft pilot kicks in. So when autopick kicks in, and if I have defined here that I only want a maximum of 3 quarterbacks on my roster, let's say I am 18 rounds into the draft, I've already picked 3 quarterbacks. I fall asleep, I time out, and then auto pick kicks in. Well, by me specifying that I want a maximum of 3 quarterbacks here, I'm guaranteed that when auto pick kicks in, it's not going to give me another quarterback when it goes to my ADP. So these are it'll never give you or put you in a position where you have an unbalanced construction of your team if you define maximum amounts of players at each position. So I've defined here 3 quarterbacks, 7 running backs, 9 receivers, 3 tight ends, 3 kickers, and 3 defenses. So that's the other thing that I wanted to do in here, and you can change these. You know, maybe you wanted 6 running backs and 10 receivers. That's fine too. So I have made these changes. I'm going to save and exit. Now I've got my default strategy set up with my specific July 21st ranking set. So now let's close my draft pilot window, go into my draft room, and now that I have this draft pilot set up and it's basically applied to all my leagues because I didn't specify any league in particular, you're going to see that this player queue over on the left-hand side is actually being backed by my draft pilot rankings. So if I go to the bottom of this player list, Cam Akers should be at the bottom. And there he is. That's because now the draft room is now pulling ADP from your draft pilot strategy, which is using your default set of rankings or your custom rankings. So that's basically it. I would highly recommend you set up draft pilot as a safeguard, and they'll any other players that you want to fade when you're defining those rankings. Say you're of the mindset that you just don't want AJ Green because he sucks, and you're tired of getting a 0 because he can't get open. And you could fade AJ Green completely and put him down in the dumpster with Cam Akers, and you can do those types of things. And then when you come in here and your default ADP list is being backed by the draft pilot rankings. So I'll give it a try, and it's bailed me out a couple times, especially with a 2-hour timer. On the East Coast, that thing doesn't shut off till 2 a.m. So sometimes the draft will speed up at midnight, and I get caught off guard, and I go on auto pick. So this has saved me a few times um, in that respect. But specifically, this is to help people avoid auto drafting Cam Akers right now. That's sort of the matter that's at hand. So check it out, and you can watch this video over and over again because it can be a little confusing, setting that draft pilot up the first time, how to navigate around there. So I expect you might have to watch the video a couple times to get it set up. So I hope this helps you guys, and happy drafting, folks.